George Hincapie is the figurehead of a new American pro team that's coming called Adventure. What is it? Modern Adventure. Have either of you two watched Peep Show? No. Okay. Here's one for the Peep Show heads. Modern Adventure Pro Cycling sounds like the publishing company that Mark Corrigan gets his book published out, which is called British London Publishing. It sounds like a Ponzi scheme, and I'm sure it's not. I like how they said they're going to bring back American cycling when there's already 2 American World Tour teams there, but maybe they're not American enough for them.
I mean, to be fair, as much as I like both of those teams, they're not especially American. Like they,
EF's pretty American, I'd say. No.
Well, and the like bike racing within the country itself is definitely racing within the country itself is pretty dire at the moment.
But the interesting thing here for people who aren't into who don't really care about like just as a new team, is that on the jersey there could be spotted a logo for the Move podcast, which is the podcast that George Hincapie is on with Lance Armstrong, where they talk about bike racing in between their adverts for all sorts of potions and tricks to do something
like
to your body.
Most podcasts other than this one.
Yeah, which is a shame because I'd like to try being swole like once.
We have too much hair as well. I feel like those you generally have a lack of hair.
Okay, so you're saying give it 20 years. Okay, yeah. So then on the website as well, it says how the Move is a partner for Modern Adventure Cycling, which is again terrible. So many terrible bike team names coming out of the woodwork these days. So saw that, got on the old email to I didn't presume it'd be George Hincapie replying, but apparently he was looped in to provide the answer to why Lance Armstrong, or at least Lance Armstrong's company that he definitely majority owns, or he's the figurehead for the podcast. Let's be clear,
it's his podcast.
It's not George and Lance's podcast. It's Lance and then the sorry people all sitting around his feet listening to, as they always have done, listening to whatever he wants to talk about. So George replied when we asked about like why Lance could do it while being banned, because he's banned for life from cycling. George said, "I'm part owner of the podcast along with Lance. I saw it as an opportunity to promote the team through these channels and gain more support through the outlet, as we have big viewership during the tour. No other affiliation beyond that," with Lance he's referring to there. "Looking forward to a great show this year talking about the sources." Like, that doesn't really answer the question of like, did the UCI not, did they not see the Move on the list and be...
Well, here's the thing for me. I don't care what Lance Armstrong gets up to in his day-to-day life. I don't really care. I don't care what George Hincapie gets up to in his day-to-day life. I think that what was missed, and a lot of the comments suggest that this was missed in your piece that you wrote on this, Johnny, is the fact that the only reason it's really a story for us is because Lance Armstrong is banned from associating with cycling in any sort of organized official way.
Yeah.
And the UCI clearly doesn't keep a super close eye on this because we've been the one to notice multiple times. And like, it's not like a gotcha thing. It's like he's banned, and it wasn't us that banned him. It was the UCI WADA that banned him, and so therefore, it's sort of worth chucking the question out there: does this fall afoul of that ban? That was really our fundamental question here, because.
And he actually there's a press conference last week. And he was asked about it and said in no uncertain terms that Lance wouldn't be involved.
Yeah.
He mentioned that they'd be promoting it via the Move. He didn't actually say sponsored by the Move, which is the website makes it seem actually sponsored by. But he said Lance wouldn't be involved. So I think they're aware that they can't really say that. They can't say that he's involved. But they're gonna. I think they're probably just going to try to see what they can get away with. And then if the UCI comes down on them and says, no, you can't have the Move on your jersey or whatever, then they'll probably just not have it. But I think until that happens, I think they're just going to roll with it.
But the Move can talk about this team all they want. That's the thing.
Yeah,
exactly. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's no ban on media association like in that way, because that's what we found out with Lance's podcast being on the on the Peacock app during the tour last year.
Yep.
But then Hincapie sent another email saying that the UCI registration process is still underway. So they're not even a fully signed on pro team yet,
right?
And all sponsorship arrangements are part of that review. And then this is a bit that's a bit weird. He said, "We've been fully transparent about the structure and are working with our legal team to ensure everything meets their requirements." So saying they're transparent about the structure means they've shown supposedly that Lance isn't named in any of the documents, stuff like that.
Right.
But I mean,
well, so yeah, part of the application process with the UCI is you list out, like, you have to do a bunch of things. You have to provide financial guarantees. You have to show that you actually have the money. You have to like literally show the accounts full of money, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And you also have to list where all the money is coming from and the sponsors that are related to it. I think one of the questions for me is if it's an in-kind kind of relationship. So basically, it's like the trading media coverage, not cash. It's probably much like wider gray area is my guess. More broadly, I think in general, as a sort of like Lance ambivalent person, Hincapie ambivalent person, Hincapie's always actually been quite nice to me. And the fact that there are a couple of younger riders from the next generation that are directly involved in this. So Joey Roscoff and Alex Howes are both involved. And because American cycling is in this place where it could really use kind of all the help it could get, I think we can sort of hold two things in our head at the same time, which is, one, we'd like to ensure that the man who's been banned from the sport for life and who is also kind of an asshole and has done some reasonably terrible things to various people over the course of his career, that he stays at arm's length. I think that's a reasonable ask. At the same time, the rest of them have done their time and come back in a lot of the same way that a lot of other team general managers have done, that Jonathan Vaughters has done, that you could list them all, right? And so at that point, I think you kind of just you wish them well, I guess. Like I genuinely hope that this team can grow and do something interesting. They're talking about going to the Tour de France within 5 years. Great, another American team.
Yeah, who isn't? Who isn't?
The thing is, you have to say that because otherwise, no one's going to give you any money. Right, like that has to be the plan. But even if they get close, even if if they get closer than a lot of the other operations that have come and gone, and given the people behind it and the connections that they have, I think that's likely. I think that's my perspective on it, which is just sort of, like I said, you can hold these two things in your head at the same time. You can kind of wish the team and its riders and a lot of the staff, you can wish them well, and you can also be like, well, there are rules in place around riders that have been banned for life, and let's make sure that they are actually followed.
So I first of all totally agree, and second of all, I feel like when I wrote the story that with the launch, there were a lot of commenters who were just down on the idea of Hincapie being involved at all, and a lot of those comments, the way that they were phrased, like led me to believe that a lot of people didn't really realize like Hincapie ran a team for like a decade.
Yeah.
So this is not some new thing where Hincapie's just coming out of the woodwork after hiding. Like, he ran a team that was a pretty important part of the like American racing scene for quite a while. It was it was called Hincapie, it was called Haloesco. It's had a couple of different names over the years.
Tom's came through it.
Tom's came through that team, and a bunch of other a bunch of riders who were like the best American riders, or maybe the second best American riders for quite a while, came through that team. Some of them are now going to work with Hincapie again, like Robin Carpenter, or you know, like the riders who
was it. Joey Roscoff was on that team as well.
Roscoff was on that team as well. Ty Magner was on that team. Like a lot of guys who were the biggest names at any given, I don't know, Tour of Utah or any given Philly Classic, which those are the races that were our bread and butter in the American racing scene, races that no longer exist. But they were all, a lot of these riders were on Hincapie's former team. So it's not like this is a brand new, the idea of sponsoring a team is a brand new thing for Hincapie. He's run a team before. The team was a pretty important part of the American racing ecosystem, did a lot of good things, and some good riders, like, again, Tom's is the big one for us that we like, came up through this team. So I think we've already seen a Hincapie running a team actually, can be an important and useful part of the American racing ecosystem. Hopefully we get that again, especially now. Last time he ran a team, not that long ago, because the Hincapie Racing Squad folded a couple of years ago, there were a few American teams at the continental or pro-continental level. There were multiple races, UCI, just second-tier UCI races that American riders could go to. Now, none of those things are true anymore. There's like Novo Nordisk is the only second division team around, and they don't really race very frequently in major races. There's none of those big stage. Tour of Utah's gone. The Colorado race, whatever you want to call it, because there's a new one every couple of years, gone. Tour of California, gone. So hopefully we might maybe see a little bit of a revival if we get some young American riders on a team like this. And I think there is a chance for that to work out, even if Tour de France he said 5 years at first, then they sent out a press conference and said 6 years, but the press release also said by 2032, that is 7 years away. So whatever the changing window,
7 years, you say?
Yeah.
7.
Yeah.
Oh.
Conspiracy.
Whatever the changing window the tour seems like a hard sell. But in any case, at least maybe we get some revival and interest of American cycling. Hopefully.
There's this funny dichotomy, which is that to get a team off the ground in America, the associations that they have are probably quite useful.
Yeah.
Right? Like having Lance around, having George around, having these other riders around. That's quite useful for pulling in money in those relationships that they have. For getting to the Tour de France, if that is the end goal, it suddenly becomes detrimental. Because ASO is not going to give a wild card to a team associated with Lance Armstrong.
Well, yeah. And also, a lot of young riders, I think, are probably maybe hesitant to come up through that if they have other options.
Yeah, I don't know. I maybe. Like, I've talked with riders about this quite a lot in terms of like riders that rode for like Trek Livestrong back in the day and things like that, and they have quite a different perspective on it. I think that they were somewhat insulated from the era prior, and they see these individuals for sort of like on a personal level, which is really quite different. Because the other thing that's interesting to me is just sort of how all these different riders, if you take the riders that were part of like the Reason decision back in 2011 or whatever, 2012. And the riders that were given those 6-month bans, the Americans that were given those 6-month bans, U.S. Postal Crew, basically, and the different kind of tacks they've taken and directions that they've gone, and therefore how they have been received by the wider public. So, like Christian Vanneveld, for example, is an NBC commentator these days, and I think generally viewed quite, at worst, neutrally, right?
He did his time in the Peloton studio.
He did his time in the Peloton studio, indeed. And then you've got like anybody who kind of stayed closer to Armstrong, like Hincapie certainly did, is very much viewed somewhat more with somewhat more suspicion by a certain portion of the cycling audience. And you kind of have this spectrum, and it's basically like how far did you get from Lance? And and therefore how quickly could you sort of like rehabilitate your image? But also, like I said, you kind of leave behind these opportunities that being associated with that guy provides you. So I'm really interested to see what happens here. That's what it comes down to.
I've been hearing some conspiracy / fan fiction theories around what may be the potential grand plan behind this move, but I think it has to be trust tree material because it's quite off the reservation.
After dark. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we'll do even more opinions in After Dark. I think we can kind of wrap that up there because again, I'm intrigued to see what happens. People have at various times accused me of being an Armstrong apologist, accused me of being an Armstrong hater, and
Kaylee.
What I really try to be is the Don Draper. I don't think about you at all. I
just like it when he pops up. I've written 3 Lance Armstrong stories, I think, in the past few years, and it's always when he pops up around the Tour de France, almost trying to like test the waters and like maybe open the door a little bit to see how it's received and if anyone notices. So I think it's just interesting to keep track of like these obviously very calculated moves, ironically, that he's making.
Yep, he's nothing if not calculated. He's nothing. Like everything he does is PR.
On that note,
calculated.
I know we want to wrap this up, but just to back that up, one person who I think would agree with you is George Hincapie, because in the press conference when asked about the involvement, he said Lance wouldn't be involved. However, I think he's one of the smartest people I know, so I'm definitely going to ask him for advice. So Hincapie agrees with you. Lance, smart guy.
Duh.
Oh, man.
That's great. It's going to be fun.
It'll be fun to watch, and like I said, I think the fact that there are some younger guys. I say young guys. Alex is the same age as me. Neither of us are young anymore, but we're younger than Lance and George. So yeah, the fact that there's some other guys involved that are from a different era, I think, is a good thing. And those are the people that will probably have more direct contact with the athletes as well, which I think is helps folks out there feel better. I'm not sitting here like, I don't think anyone's sitting here being like, whoa, they're gonna dope the riders because they did in 2001. Like no one is sitting here doing that.